This is my health-based Sirius and Orion build for Steel Path solo survival. It is not just about stacking health. During the mission, you build up health. You'll use your first ability and primary weapon for regular combat. Then you switch between Sirius and Orion to build constellation stars and connect everything into Celestial Clash. Survivability comes from high health, rolling guard, and the brief invulnerability during swaps. Both sides can apply status with their first abilities, but Orion also brings defense reduction. In this setup, Orion is set as the primary sun, and his third ability is replaced with Brightbonnet. For the main combat loop, I use the first ability and primary weapon together. Sirius can generate Jade light motes with his second ability, while Light Sanctuary gives defensive support. On the Orion side, Astral Shell helps defensively, and his first ability can apply status and reduce enemy defenses. From there, I switch between Sirius and Orion, build constellation stars, and connect the setup into Celestial Clash. This is the Orion side of the build. In this setup, Orion is the primary sun, and his third ability is replaced with Brightbonnet. Orion still has his own defensive tool, Astral Shell. When Orion takes damage, Astral Shell can turn into a decoy and draw enemy fire, giving him another layer of safety. His first ability can apply status and reduce enemy defenses, so Orion is not just support. He can clear regular enemies and set up tougher targets for the rest of the build. For my setup, the mods already provide enough damage, so Arcane Circumvent is not always required. Sometimes I swap it for another Arcane, depending on what I want from the build. For weapons and companion, you can use whatever fits your playstyle. This setup is still not fully optimized. There is room to tune the weapons, companion, and some parts of the build. But the core idea is already working well for Steel Path solo survival, so I wanted to share this current version. Next is the Sirius side of the build. Sirius is not the primary sun in this setup, but he is still a big part of the combat loop. His first ability works well for regular clearing, and his second ability generates Jade light motes for extra heat damage and status. I will explain the shard setup in more detail later, but the important thing is, this build is mainly made for solo play. Because of how the health stacking works, it is not really made for public squads. In public squads, other players can take many of the kills before this build has time to build enough health. So this is one of those setups where the build screen alone does not tell the full story. Please do not just copy it and expect it to work the same way everywhere. Next is the shard setup. The key part here is the Topaz Archon Shard bonus. This setup uses the bonus that builds up your health when you kill enemies with blast damage. That is why the build becomes safer as the mission goes on. This is also why I said the build is mainly made for solo play. In public squads, other players can take many of the kills before you build enough health, so the health stacking can feel less consistent. I also use shards for comfort, like casting speed, but the main point is the health stacking. From here, I will show how the build plays in an actual mission. The main idea is to keep building health, manage your buffs, use your first ability and primary weapon for regular enemies, and switch between Sirius and Orion when you need constellation stars or a safer reset. For tougher enemies, like acolytes, I use Orion's first ability to reduce their armor before finishing them off. You do not need to force the swap every few seconds. I usually swap when I need stars, when I want to refresh the flow, or when I need the brief invulnerability from switching. One small thing to keep in mind is the swap itself. When you switch between Sirius and Orion, you get a brief moment of invulnerability. It is short, but it can help you avoid damage while repositioning or resetting the fight. For weapons, you can choose whether you want to play mainly around your primary or your secondary. That part is up to your playstyle. I have also been testing Scourge as the primary weapon with dual Toxocyst Incarnon as the secondary. If you want to focus on your primary weapon, I recommend using a secondary that can spread status easily. Once you have enough constellation stars, you can connect the setup into Celestial Clash. I do not use it as the only source of damage. For me, it is more like a payoff after building health, managing buffs, and using both sides of the kit. The important part is not to rush it. Use your regular combat tools first, build stars naturally, then use Celestial Clash when the timing makes sense. That way, the fourth ability feels like part of the loop, not something you are forcing every time. There is one important weakness with this build. If you go down, the health you built up during the mission can reset back to the base value. That means the build can feel very strong once it gets going, but you still need to pay attention. This is not a build I would play completely on autopilot. You need to manage your buffs, keep an eye on your health, and use Rolling Guard or the Swap Invulnerability when things get dangerous. If you respect that weakness, the build feels much more consistent. So the build is not just about having a large health number. The point is to build health over time, use both sides of Sirius and Orion, and turn that setup into safer Steel Path solo survival gameplay. It still has room to optimize, but the core idea is already working well. I do not recommend this exact build for level cap runs. If that is your goal, you will need to adjust the build for that purpose. Check the description for the build details and extra notes. I will keep testing Sirius and Orion, so if I find better options, I will update the build in the future.